Hey everyone, welcome to Pianist Academy. I'm Charles Szczepanek. Hello to many friends that are here. Welcome Jess, Lori, OCD King, good to see you. JB, Whitney, good morning. C Drive, it's always a lovely, happy Wednesday when we do these streams, yes. And Antonio, I was cracking up when I saw your comment come in. I didn't forget your questions, but we'll get there. C Drive, yes. Oh, thanks, C Drive. That was before all the work that was done on the piano, so that's especially a nice compliment here. Nancy, welcome. And Sinden, hello. Bedlington Groomer, hello. June, good to see so many friends. If you haven't had a chance to say hi in the chat, please drop a hello. Let us know if you can where you're tuning in from. That would be great. So today is a totally open day for any of your questions. I don't have anything else to announce or anything else to talk about. So we can just jump in. Whoever wants to drop the first question, you know what? Drop your first question. I'm going to talk to Antonio about the question he sent in via email. Antonio asked about... Oh, I can't even... I was thinking about him as the countdown was happening, and I can't remember his name now. Hello, Sunny Hawk. Antonio asked about my opinion about a pianist, a specific pianist. Good evening, Alexis. Welcome. Antonio refreshed my memory. I don't want to say the wrong name. Long story short, hello, Johan. Long story short, Antonio, I have not listened to much of his music. I listened to a tiny little bit over the last few days. Just a tiny bit. Oh, Sinden, that's a request. Improvising on Bach. Yeah, Antonio. Okay, Friedrich, Gulda. Okay, thanks, Antonio. So the music that I listen to, he's a fine pianist. I didn't listen to any of his jazz, and I guess that's the one thing I can point out to everybody that's here. And that you were mentioning also in your email over to me. Gulda was both a well-known and very accomplished classical pianist and jazz pianist. And I think he also experimented with some other things too, some of the more modern techniques as well. Kind of an eccentric guy. I had heard of him, Antonio, before you mentioned him a few weeks ago. I had never listened to any of his work. And when I did listen, it was very good. I didn't find it like overwhelmingly evocative for my taste. It was just very good. It was very good. Now, I didn't listen to any of his jazz, and that might be different, and I should go back and listen to some of that. But... Antonio, those are my thoughts. If people want to go check him out, I think it would be worth it just to know another pianist. I think some of his Mozart and Beethoven is pretty well known. I think, Antonio, you mentioned you like his Debussy as well. I listened to Beethoven and Debussy in particular. So both of the recordings I listened to had kind of a brighter piano tone. Which I thought was interesting, especially from the time period. So, yeah, Whitney. Instead of questions, I can just play. You know what? Actually, I'll announce something that's related to that in just a second. And Lori, oh, wonderful. I'm going to get to your question, Lori. And June, you have a question, opinion on newer pianos that are constructed for small hands. Okay, great couple questions to open this up. Sinden, I am not going to improvise on Bach. I don't even if we were working privately, it's not that it's like live for everybody, but I am not a classical improviser. I have not studied that. And I would just be very unsuccessful. Yeah, so that's why we're not going to do that today. But Sinden, that would be cool. Okay, so my announcement, and then I'll jump into Lori's question. And this relates a little bit to what Whitney said. So some of you know this, and I may have even mentioned it. Anyway, some of you that are here know this because you're in my private group, the Next Level Pianist Academy group. It's a membership program. Anyway, what I do in that membership program, part of what we do in that membership program is we have practicing sessions, and we get together and practice at the same time. Hello, Catherine. And what I'm going to start on YouTube for a short time is I'm going to do some of those sessions live. I don't know if I will announce them ahead of time, but I was going to do some practicing sessions of mine live on this channel. And so, you know what, if you have pieces that you'd like to request to see me practice, and the whole purpose behind this is to get like a behind the scenes of how a professional pianist works at something, whether it's from scratch or something midway or something that's very well prepared. And instead of just playing, I narrate my process as we go. So that's something I do for my group, my private group. And in addition to that, we all get together and actually practice at the same time, and we practice our different stuff that everybody's working on. But what I'm going to do on YouTube is just my side of that, just me practicing and narrating my technique. And I'll probably do that probably starting this month, maybe through the end of the year. So if there's anything that you'd like to see me practice live, mistakes and all, and see the process, let me know. Let me know. You know what? Let me know in the chat, and I'll try to mark those down as I see them pop in. Otherwise, feel free to leave a comment on this video after we're done with the live session, or my email address is in the description, so you can send me an email if there's something you're working on that you'd like to see my method. We're not going to do that today, though. Okay, that was my announcement. Anyway, let's go back and grab Lori's question. So Lori says, you're hoping to work towards pieces by Chopin, Mendelssohn, etc., as the great classical composers in the future. Do you have suggestions about repertoire or composers before you're ready for those? Yeah, I do have a couple suggestions. First off, Lori, Mendelssohn has a couple songs without words that are very accessible. One of them I've done a course on. I think it's the most accessible one. I'll play just a hair of it for you. It's Opus 19, number 4. Now, a lot of people think that opening is a little intimidating. It's a lot of arpeggios. But what we get after that is much more straightforward. That repeats. And that arpeggiated opening also comes back in the end. So Mendelssohn, Opus 19, number 4. Here's a quick look at, this is my own edition of it, which you get if you enroll in the course on the piece. It's a really lovely piece, and I believe it's RCM level 5. So that would be a great one. Let's see. Is it this one? Yes. Okay, another Mendelssohn. Yeah, a lot of the songs without words have one piece in the set that is quite accessible, and some of the other ones may be very challenging. So this is Opus 30, number 3. Let's see, I'm not quite as familiar with this one. Okay. I think this is level 6 or 7. So that one's very nice. Catherine, you say you've been learning, that previous Mendelssohn for 2 months. Wonderful. Do you enjoy it, Catherine? The next Mendelssohn beyond that, this one's a bit more challenging, but I'll throw it in the mix for you anyway. Opus 38, number 4. Again, you notice this theme through these pieces? They all begin with an arpeggiation figure, 2 to 4 bars of that, and then they turn into something that's kind of like a hymn. And so it's very homophonic, where a lot of the voices are moving at the same time, as opposed to polyphonic like Bach would be. You get the idea. This is another really lovely piece. Hey, Rotzi. I'm doing well. How are you doing? Catherine, you say that previous, the first one, Opus 19, number 4. It's been tough, but you're getting there. Stick with it. It's a lovely piece of music to introduce you to Mendelssohn's writing. Let's see. So, Laurie, I think, even based on what I've heard from you, especially that first Mendelssohn, I think you could already start that. You know, there's another one I should throw in the mix. Ooh, that's a really bad copy. Hold on. That might be... Oh, I've got a cleaner copy. Hold on. Yeah. This is Opus 19, number 6. I think this is more difficult than number 4, the very first one I showed you, but it moves more slowly. Okay, so there's some Mendelssohn for you. The left hand in that gets a little tricky after the opening because there's more jumping around, but that's another good possibility for you, and you get to jump right into those Mendelssohn pieces. A lot of Chopin, there are some of the typical ones that people work on early, like the Prelude in E minor, number 4. I don't always suggest that students work on that too early because even though the notes themselves, it's not fast moving and it's not super technical in that way. It's incredibly hard to be expressive in the right way to play it. If you're not familiar with the piece, yes, Nancy, I was going to go there in a second. But good recommendation, Nancy. Let's see. Preludes. So this is Chopin's Prelude number 4 in E minor. We know this piece, yeah. It looks deceptively simple on the page. And even the part that's a little more intense at the end here. That's not technically all that challenging. But playing all those left-hand chords and playing them extremely softly and with a lot of control is more difficult than a lot of people realize. So just that word of caution. It's so exposed that if one of those sticks out of place, yeah, it can be. That's why that piece is actually ranked pretty difficult on grading systems, even though the notes themselves are fairly easy to learn and there's no rapid scale movement or arpeggiation. OCD King, we can take a look at that Chopin Nocturne. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, good, Rotzi. You said you learned the A minor Chopin Waltz. Oh, that's another good one. That's a great suggestion for Chopin. The A minor Waltz opus, the posthumous one. That piece. It's B150, since it's opus posthumous. Let's see. There is another prelude that is commonly learned early. I wish I could remember which number it was. No, Rhodesy, no, I didn't do the... Does it start down here? There you go. And then it's up an octave. Rhodesy, that's playing by harmonic memory. Oh, this one is cool, and this doesn't get talked about as much, I feel like. This isn't the one I was thinking of. But the number 20 prelude. Etc. That's a great piece. Maybe I scrolled past it. Let's look again. There we go. Okay, page 19. It was so short I scrolled past it. This is the one I was thinking of, A major. I'd rather a student play this before the E minor piece, number 4. So really lovely. That's half the piece already. Why don't we just finish it? Yeah. Oh, Rotzi, everything's relative. You say, yeah, you notice in a lot of Chopin's music, every difficulty has meaning. Yeah, well, Rotzi, I'd say with all music, there is no such thing as easy music. It all has its own shade of difficulty in whatever way it is. So, when it's not super technical, it's always musical and interpretive. No matter what level we get to, no matter how difficult the ranking is. Yes, great, Laura. I'm glad you liked that one. And there's a couple more places we need to go before we move on. Catherine, you say you feel you can't do the expressivity in Chopin. Okay, you learned a Mazurka. Yeah, those are great. It takes time. It takes time to dive in and explore the music and learn phrase and all of those things. Oh, neat, Nancy. I didn't know it. I didn't know that. Sinden, you said you really like the Chopin waltz because the chord progressions are very common in contemporary piano. That's true. Um, and Modern Admiral, I see your comment. You say you've been learning the Opus 30, number 6 Mendelssohn Gondola Song, and now you want to learn all of Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn, it's really great. Yeah. I think it gets the short end of the stick sometimes because we're always playing, Beethoven or Schubert or Schumann or Brahms. Mendelssohn has some really great music too. Rhodesy, you're asking about Chopin Mazurka Opus 24, number 3. Let me see if I can come back to that. I think I might have all of the Mazurkas on here. Maybe. But let me finish up answering Lori's question first. So another composer, especially to learn... let's go 2 more places. One, I believe it was Nancy who mentioned William Gillick. You should really pick up this book, the 24 Lyric Preludes in Romantic Style by William Gillick. They're really great pieces, very much in the style of Chopin. They're different, but they do a great job preparing you for playing Chopin's music. Let me see if I can pick one. Yeah, let's look at this one. So the interlude, I don't remember what number this is in the book, but... That's a really lovely piece. But the entire set is really nice. And it's not just soft pieces like that, but there's a whole variety of stuff to take a look at. So Gillick is great. There was another composer I thought... Oh, yes, of course. Here's the cover page again. The 22 Nocturnes for Chopin by women composers that I featured on this channel late last year, and I've recorded and posted 2 of the nocturnes from this book. Including the very first one, which is lovely. This is a bit on the harder side, based on the last thing I heard you play, Lori. But the first piece in this book, I think, is one of the more accessible ones. And it's very much in the style of Chopin without being... it doesn't use quite as much range of the keyboard. So... So that's a little bit of the main theme of that piece. Lori, those are my suggestions for you. So there's a whole lot, including some Chopin and some Mendelssohn, and a couple contemporary composers. William Gillick, this set of 22 nocturnes by a variety of contemporary composers. That's a ton of music to check out. So feel free to look through that. That was a great question. Let me jump back to let me see, June's question. And then maybe we can jump forward to Rhodesy asking about that Mazurka, if I have that sheet music. June, you had asked about If I have an opinion on the newer pianos that are constructed for smaller hands. Yeah. Okay, first of all, let's go back a little bit. Everything that I've seen about historical instruments, especially, let's say, the pianos from Chopin's time and Liszt's time, the keys are actually, if they are narrower, it's by a tiny, tiny fraction of it's not noticeable, a fraction of a millimeter. The differences that I've seen. So for companies that advertise as, maybe more historical, or it's a key layout that's more historically accurate, I don't think I agree. I haven't seen, obviously, every piano, historical piano, but the ones that I've come across and that I've seen measured online, the keys are the same width as the modern piano. So, secondly, the trouble with practicing on a keyboard, or even an acoustic instrument that's been built with narrower keys, is that your technique will never translate to any other instrument. And your learning of whatever pieces will never translate to any other instrument. It's hard enough for pianists that when we go and we play something else, and I know a lot of us just play at home, and that's great, but you still might want to play somewhere else, sometime. And I don't mean in a public performance. I just mean anywhere. If a friend has a piano and you go over to their place and you want to play something, Roadsy does some playing in public, like I think libraries. I see you send a lot of videos in from a public place, but it's not like a performance. Of course, if you wanted to play at church or any of those things, 99.9% of the time, those places are not going to have a keyboard or an acoustic that matches the size key that you'd be practicing on. And that's the biggest reason why I don't suggest that anybody learn on one of those instruments. It just won't translate. You will never be able to play anything that's not your home instrument. And I don't see that trend really taking off on a bigger scale other than a very niche market. I know a couple professionals that would really love, June. I know a couple professionals that would probably really love that. I'm very good friends with a professor at Indiana University who has very small hands and is in collaborative piano. So she's always playing orchestral reductions and all kinds of things. And usually she has to rewrite a lot of stuff, one, because of the small hands, and two, because a lot of orchestral reductions are just poorly written in the first place. And she would be one that would be a proponent of that. But she also knows, every institution everywhere would have to invest such a huge amount of money to have so relatively few people play that instrument that I just don't think it's realistic. All that said, I have known small-handed ladies that can play the pants off Rachmaninoff who had massive hands. And because it's all about learning how to use what we have, learning our reach, learning how to play efficiently in a relaxed way, right? Navigating all those keys everywhere we need to go in an efficient way. And so in a lot of repertoire, there's not a problem with breaking chords when you need to, or leaving a note out when you need to. That's not a problem. And I'd rather someone do that and play a standard instrument, because we're going to be able to take that, what we've learned, and play anywhere, than maybe play all of the notes, but never be able to play anywhere except at home. So I had a friend in my undergrad who is like maybe a 4'8" Korean girl, and she could barely reach an octave. And she played the Rachmaninoff Second Sonata on her final, I think it was her final doctoral recital. And it was so good. So it's possible, it's really possible to learn that stuff and play it really well. Now, Sinden, I love what you said. You say You perform at a piano meetup monthly. That's really great. Yeah. Lovely. Okay. Antonio. Nancy, you say if a piece has repeating octave chords, you pass. Yeah. Yeah. It depends. Sometimes there can be ways of unlocking an octave for lots of people. You have to have, extremely small hands to not have an octave reach. And the problem with that is usually how we're going about stretching and how we're going about reaching for it. That could be perfected. Or just worked on. Yeah. Antonio, I'll answer your next question, and then I'm going to try to jump back to what Rhodesy asked about a mazurka. Let's see. Okay. Antonio, you said, at what age are a child's hands big enough to play advanced piano repertoire? That's... Yeah, obviously everyone develops slightly differently. Advanced repertoire, a lot of children, especially prodigies that play a really advanced repertoire, they're generally going to gravitate more toward Mozart, Bach, Mozart, Haydn, things where there's more scalar work and not really, really big chords. You're not going to hear any children playing Rachmaninoff or Tchaikovsky or anything like that. But, I have seen some really young kids playing Chopin etudes and playing them extremely well. When they're really trained well, and it's great because they learn from such a young age that it's not about stretching to notes, it's just about moving to the notes that we need. And it is harder for them. I've seen kids like 6 years old playing Chopin Opus 10 number 1. And there's no way, they don't even have an octave reach. There's no way that they're going to be able to stretch and play a 10th, let alone, But their hand just floats, which is what you're supposed to do. And in a way, they learn how to play that etude, and they learn how to play everything better because they never have big enough hands to play almost anything. So they're never stuck in this place that adults get stuck in, which is stretched out and trying to reach everything. And, they learn how to take a risk, move to the next note, and perfect that muscle movement in the whole body. So that's just about hand size. I think there's a lot of repertoire, as long as it isn't chordal and very large, there's a lot of repertoire that really young kids can play. And, well, you said big enough. I'm going to add to that, at what point are a child's hands strong enough to play advanced repertoire? Does anybody have any thoughts on that before I give you mine? Antonio, including you. When are a child's hands strong enough? And I'm asking the question because there's a very specific place I'm going to point to with my answer. Alexis, yes. You say you saw a 12-year-old playing Mephisto Waltz, number 2, and you were perplexed. Yes. Rhodesy, you say you saw an 11-year-old prodigy on Instagram playing the double thirds etude. Yeah, interesting, right? Antonio, you say you think almost any age, since it doesn't take much strength, but technique. Anybody else want to chime in? Alexis, you say you think maybe 8 onwards. That's when you see prodigies start playing crazy stuff. Yeah, it's pretty easy to see that kind of stuff online these days. Nancy, you say when their bones are fully formed. Well before that, Nancy. So let's see. Antonio didn't give an age. Well, he said almost any age. That's the closest to, I think, the best answer. Newhouse said that starting at the age of 4, any typically developing human, has all of the coordination and strength necessary. It's not an exact quote, but summing it up, that's what he said. Starting at the age of 4, any child age 4 can play the piano and play it at an extremely high level. And part of why he teaches that in his pedagogy is that, like Antonio said, it doesn't take strength, it takes technique. Playing the piano efficiently is all about how we approach it, not about how strong we are. And his statement is a reminder to people that playing the piano is never forcing our way through the notes. It's never forcing our way through a phrase. It's never bearing down. It's learning how to let go. And remarkably, children do that extremely well usually. They haven't been trained how to clench and be tight. That's something that we learn as we grow and as we age and as we experience stress. We learn all of those things. So children are, they have a leg up there because they don't have to undo that process. But age 4. Rotzi, that's an interesting question. You say you wonder how Chopin would react to his etudes being performed by child prodigies. Just my personal opinion, I think Chopin would be not very happy with how his etudes are played by the majority of people today. Because the majority of people, with the exception of a couple people that are really at the top, the majority of people whip through them like they're purely exercises, and they miss all the musical detail. And we live in an age where it's just everyone wants to be blown away by how fast you can play something, and how that's Chopin didn't write the etudes for that reason. They're still supposed to be extremely musical pieces, and I think that rarely happens today, regardless of age. Child prodigies, especially, kids usually just don't play with as much intention behind their interpretation. They can be remarkable in a lot of ways, but they usually don't play with as much emotional connection because they just don't understand that yet. There's no substitute for time and experience to understand that. So, hello, Ryan. Johan, you asked about muscle development and coordination for children. Some children have, I think it's safe to call it talent, if they can sit down and learn complex muscle patterns at the piano like that. And some children can't. Is it talent, or is it a predisposition toward certain fine motor skills? Sure. And then there's, going beyond talent, which needs to be developed, to kids that can just sit down and do it without any training. That's very different. Usually even prodigies have lessons, and they take lessons from an extraordinary teacher, and one who can be very careful in shaping their development so that they don't overdo things that they could so easily do. So, Bedlington Groomer, you say, so who plays Chopin well? I like Yun Chun Lim's recording of the etudes that recently came out. I think those are nice. And they're, extremely fast, extremely well played. It's not as fast, and it's not quite as clean even, but I really like Jan Lisiecki. I think that's how you say his name. He's a Canadian pianist. I really like his recording of the etudes. as well. If you compare them side by side, it's interesting. So they're not quite as clean, and he's still an extraordinary pianist. But I really enjoy what he finds within the etudes and the nuance that he finds and brings out. So those are two of my preferences. I don't often listen to the etudes. So Alexis, you said you thought singing was your calling at 4, and it really wasn't. And yes, I know, Rhodesy, that Wim Winters has a lot to say about tempo. Yeah. I do think there's some sort of missing, and well, the whole reason I disagree with double beat theory is that there wouldn't have been such a dramatic change in piano technique from Beethoven to Chopin. And to Liszt, who wasn't, that far removed, lived much longer. But if you take, Wim Winters' idea about having the beat, Beethoven becomes extraordinarily slow. And it's, it was known to be like fireworks and really extraordinary pieces of music that relatively few people could play at the time. Well, the world didn't go from Beethovenian technique and not very many years later to whipping through Chopin etudes. That didn't happen. There's no lineage that would support that, regardless of the text and calling out metronome markings and definitions of metronome and all that. That just seems awfully strange that people would double the tempi of everything and be able to play it without the training. And, sure, yes, Chopin was an amazing composer, pianist. Yes, he didn't come up with all that by himself. He wasn't born in a vacuum, he didn't, he wasn't completely self-taught. So, anyway, yeah, that's my primary reason that I don't believe in the double beat theory. It just seems wacky. And the Chopin etudes, if you have the tempo, they're not truly etudes. They're not truly virtuosic piano studies anymore. Are the tempos that he marked a little crazy sometimes? Yes. Maybe they weren't so crazy when it didn't require as much effort to push the keys down, when the keys weren't as heavy. Maybe they were a little bit more attainable. And there wasn't as much playing with the entire body, although Chopin was a huge proponent of more incorporation of the body in the technique that he taught. The pianos weren't the same. Maybe there was a little bit of more ease in playing them on a period instrument. I've not experienced that. But let's not get off on that tangent. Yeah, Nancy, that's another spot. Yeah, whoever marked those tempi. My justification for those is that like Burgmüller Opus 100 are called easy and progressive etudes. So I look at the tempo markings and I say, okay, well, this could be used for study until you could reach the tempo that's marked. And until you achieve that, well, the etudes they continue to progress in difficulty. That's how I interpret the title and the metronome markings. Which is why I think, even though everybody thinks Burgmüller Opus 100 is for kids and for very beginner pianists, if you can't play them at the tempo marked, you still have more you could learn from them. Not to say you need to stick with it. Experience other music. Go further. Go other places. But you can always come back and revisit until you've really locked in your technique. And there's always going to be something new, because to take the famous... Well, the way we play at that tempo and the way we play that is very, very different. And they're very different approaches. And it takes time and experience to learn and graduate. Yeah. But you could still use those pieces to continue to make that progression. Rotzi, I wonder if you're referring to Chopin and the Etudes. I wonder if Chopin found his Etudes easy to play. Yeah, I wonder about that. As a composer myself, I tend to write things that fall naturally in my hand and that are easier for me to play, but they're not always. They don't always, they're not always there without practice, let's say. Sometimes extensive practice of my own compositions and arrangements are needed. Like the one that I showed at the beginning of the video, at the beginning of the stream today. Before I recorded that, I practiced it a lot. Even though I wrote the notes. So I would wonder if, I would wonder how much he had to practice his own etudes. I don't know offhand if we have any writings from him or letters from his students talking about that. But that would be very interesting to learn. Rotzi, can you mention again the Mazurka that you wanted to take a look at? Let's see if we can grab some of that. I do have the Mazurkas here. Did you say number 23? Opus 20? Let me know. And I missed another question. Alexis, you have a question about sight reading? Okay. If I missed another question, there was one about a Chopin nocturne, or early. OCD King, you asked about Nocturne Opus 15, number 3. Okay. Great. Rotzi, let's do a little dive into this Mazurka, and then we'll try to tackle some of those other pieces. Opus 24, number 3. Okay. Okay, Rotzi, you say you struggle with sight reading the middle section. My first question, Rotzi, is do you sight read the outer section? How is your sight reading of the outer section? Are you playing it at tempo, sight reading, Rotzi? I can't do that. That's as fast. If I was truly sight reading it and learning it, I would not go that fast. That's as fast as I could possibly push. And if I repeat, I'm no longer sight reading. Okay, so you say you know part A. So I'm asking this question, Rezi, because you use the word sight reading. So are we just talking about learning the middle section, or are you using it as a sight reading exercise? Because playing the outer section the first time through at tempo with the right rhythms and the right notes is extremely difficult. Okay, the middle section. So let's dive in. Lots of accidentals. So we're just probably talking about those couple bars. Yes? Okay. Rotzi, do you know the chords that we're playing here? That's and this maybe we'll go into some sight reading, other sight reading stuff that we talked about. This is much more advanced than, I think that was Alexis's question about sight reading. But let's talk about chords. Rhodesy, do you know the chord in the opening of measure 25? Anybody? Do you know what it is? How fast do you know what it is? You heard diminished. It is diminished. Okay, great. It's B diminished, B fully diminished 7. I'm not going to write them down, but next chord. What is it? We should know that one instantly. C minor, right? Next chord. What chord is that? I know there's time, it takes time to type. But third beat is A diminished, fully diminished 7. Next chord, B minor, B flat minor, sorry. Next chord, G, fully diminished 7. A flat major. So, okay, let's string all those together. B fully diminished 7, C minor, A fully diminished 7, B flat minor, G fully diminished 7, A flat minor. Why am I listing out the chords? Because I know if you asked me to play without looking at the score and asked me to play B fully diminished 7, I could play it. I could play it in any inversion. If you asked me to play C minor, I could play it there. I could play it in any inversion. If you asked me to play A fully diminished 7, I can play it any inversion across the keyboard. Same thing. B flat minor, G fully diminished 7, A flat major, etc. Yes. Alexis. Yeah, and I'm actually going slower than I'm actually doing it. I'm reading it much faster than I'm saying it out loud. So when we come back and we're reading 25, we want to know all of those harmonies. If we know the harmony, start with the left hand. Then it repeats. So we're seeing that pattern. Da, da, da. Repeating. And then we have an end of a bar. New chord, F fully diminished 7. G diminished. C7 dominant. F minor, 5-1 cadence. And is that right? That's right. That one's interesting. Ooh. Oh gosh. That's an augmented 6 chord. Oh, I hate augmented 6 chords. So Rhodesy, what we want to do in order to sight read this better, and sight read anything better, we want to know the harmony that we're in the middle of. Yeah? And then if you can recognize that, and you recognize the pattern that that harmony makes on the page. So if all you're doing is isolating and looking at that first chord, we want to know very quickly, well, the left hand is outlining B diminished. And can we play that chord instantly? Because then we're reading, instead of reading a lot of notes, we're reading the root and we're reading the quality of the chord. Same thing with C minor, root plus quality, etc. And then it gets a little harder when you add in the top, the melody in this case. And so that distraction makes it harder because now our eyes are having to jump back and forth and back and forth. And, yeah, those aren't the easiest chords to read. There are a lot of accidentals, and they're changing. Almost every beat, the set of accidentals is changing. But it's possible to go slowly, recognize the chord. And then maybe, Rhodesy, just take those 2 bars. If you're working on learning the piece and not just sight reading it for an exercise, take those 2 bars and you could even divide them in half. Memorize as quickly as possible without moving on. let's just take the first bar. I'm going to challenge myself and look down. Not looking at the score. It's memorized. Again. I'm looking at my hands. Okay, I've memorized bar 1. Then I'm going to move on to bar 2 and do the same process. So memorizing quickly so that we don't have to continue to read all of that, because it is a lot. Okay, that was good. Let's use that to lead into... It's Alexis, I'm looking back. Okay, you say your question is on how to go about practicing sight reading. Because you say as you find your sight reading is especially horrible. You can sight read comfortably at grade 3 or 4 ABRSM level, but anything higher, okay. That's not bad. That's really not bad. I would definitely not call that horrible. Let's talk about a similar thing here. Let's see how difficult these are. Oh, this isn't too bad. Okay. Oh, this is probably harder than grade 3 or 4. Let's jump back a book. As much as I don't like C major, let's stick with number 1. Exercise number 1 as we look at this page. This is from the Schaefer sight reading books. There are 4. I have 3 of them on my iPad. I think they're a great resource for working on sight reading. They contain some 60 or so exercises per book. You can download them for free. Hey, Calais. You can download them for free on IMSLP. Fantastic resource just to have a ton of sight reading at your fingertips, and then in a classical style. And you can always broaden from there. So, anybody, we're mainly talking to Alexis about sight reading, but anybody, how would you go about, can you describe how you'd go about sight reading this? What would step 1 be? Well, I'll fill in the blank of a couple easy ones. Right, we look at the key, we know what key it is, and we look at the time signature. Okay, so we're in the key of C major, there's no sharps, flats. Newt boy, you say find position. That works. And that works up to a certain point. So I would encourage you to not learn position-based playing, because you're going to reach a level where all of a sudden it doesn't work at all anymore for you. And method books they always teach, if you're, I can't remember, Newt boy, if you're working through method books or not, but they teach position-based playing, and it can be very hard for students to get out of that habit if a lot of repertoire has been in it. Okay, so June, you said look at the key, look at the time signature. Great, wonderful. Sinden, I love what you said. June, you say make note of accidentals. Great. Okay. Sinden, you said intervals and chord patterns. Yes, yes, yes. Nancy, note where clef changes occur. Yeah, that's great. There's one in bar 1, 2, 3, at the end of bar 4. There's a clef change in the bottom staff here. Alexis, you saying you would give the piece a quick once over, check the keys and the time signature, see if there's any difficult passage you want to look at before you start. And anything where there's lots of shifting. Okay, that's pretty good. Sinden is really onto the right best answer, the best answer. Everybody else is right. But going the next step beyond that, looking at intervals and chord patterns is really important. How can you sum up all of the pickup and bar 1? Let me circle that better. But everything that I'm circling right now, that gets one definition. What is it? Yes, nude boy. Yes. C major chord. Perfect. Bar 1 we should be seeing in this case as a C major chord. C major with some passing tones in the left hand. Some in the right hand too, but it's basically C major. What about bar 2? What is bar 2? Bar 2 kind of has two components. That's one. And that's another. Whoops, I accidentally circled more notes than we wanted. Yeah. You know what? I'd actually think about bar 2. Newt, boy, you say the 4. It's not the minor 4, but you're on the right track. It is F. I would encourage you in your sight reading, until you get to be a really high level, sight read for the root of the chord. Give us the letter name. Doing a Roman numeral analysis is great, but that's going to be most beneficial if you want to take what you're sight reading and apply even more things to that, like transposition on the spot, like understanding cadences and where they're occurring. The faster you can do that type of analysis, the more you're going to see about those things. But let's push that way down the road. That's a very advanced sight reading. Oh, thanks, ETS. Okay, so bar 2 is the 4 chord, but it's F. The root is F. It starts the bar as F major, and then we would truly analyze the next chord as something completely different. It would be the leading tone diminished chord. That's why we're not going to do Roman numerals. But the second chord of the bar, that is a very small movement away physically from F, where bar 2 began. So I don't want to analyze that quarter note that I just had circled. Put it back. There it is. I don't want to analyze that because the root is on the top of the chord, and it's going to take a long time, and it's going to really prohibit quick sight reading. So now we're combining two things that Sinden said. Chord patterns, that's what we started with. I'm going to write it down for now. C major, F major. Okay, the rest of this bar, what we didn't talk about in bar 1, is that we have a lot of stepwise motion. Down in the right hand, up in the left. Bar 2, after we read F major, we're going to read the intervals to play the next chord. So down a half step to A flat, up a step to B. Very, very close hand position. So now we're combining two things, and we want to try to read those things. Let's break this into two steps. When, let's say, you're working on sight reading and you have an example that you'd like to read, you're not taking an exam, and you have unlimited time. Do a lot of analysis first. Start with the stuff that we're doing. Analyze chords, basic chords. Analyze basically passing tones. Where do we have stepwise movement versus leaps? That's what's most important. And then what direction are they going? Do that for your entire example before you play anything. If you need to at the beginning, write it down. Even better if you don't. If you can just look at it, see the chord, and remember it. So this example is probably 16 bars. If you can start to remember things that far in advance, well, we're doing a great job. Okay, so when you get to the second line, can you remember where C major is? Can you see where A comes back? And can you see where we have a D7 chord, etc.? There's a lot of other harmony that's going on there. So after you've done your analysis, hopefully those things, they're still popping off the page at you, yeah, without having to write them down. If you need to write them down, go ahead so they can serve as a reminder. Take as much time as you need to do that sort of analysis before you play anything. Then we have two possible steps we can go from there. If you haven't done a lot of sight reading, and if you are a, let's say, relative beginner intermediate player, if you're playing repertoire that's intermediate at the highest level, our next job is probably going to be to jump in and just try to play it. But if you are coming from a more advanced repertoire level, like Alexis, I know you are, because the last time we worked together, you were playing Liszt's Liebesdrum, number 3. So when you're coming from playing repertoire like that and you're used to reading more notes, or at least learning that many more notes off a page, we have developed a lot more comfort and a lot more playing by pattern in our fingers. So what we want to do is take all that knowledge that we've gained from playing a lot of repertoire and go back to our sight reading example and visualize playing it or imagine playing it before we play anything. So if you can, the best next step after you do your analysis is to think through playing the entire example before you move a finger. And can you follow every step? And can you follow where every finger is going to need to go without moving the hand? You can be at the piano. You could be looking at the keyboard, and you could do it that way. Of course, you can't really be looking at the keyboard and at the sheet music. Secondly, if you can visualize in your mind what the keyboard looks like, and you can, if you're sitting at the piano, you can always glance down, see what it looks like. Can you take a mental snapshot of that? And when you look away, can we still visualize where's middle C? You know, that's a basic landmark for everybody. Where is that in relation to where we are? How does it feel? Can we understand without playing it? How does it feel to move my right hand thumb to middle C? How does it feel to move my left hand thumb to middle C? We're going to take that sort of knowledge and play through in our mind every bar of the piece. Every bar of our example. Yes, Sinden. Yes. For memorization, what Sinden just brought up, I would go another step. And that is, well, a couple more steps. We want to, and you can incorporate this for sight reading at a really advanced level. While you're reading it off the page, you can also hear how it goes. And if people are interested, we could dive into that topic today. But you can audiate, you can understand without ever playing a note. You know the way the piece goes. You will know if you play a wrong note with your fingers because just by looking at the page, you already know what it sounds like. At least on a basic level, you know what it sounds like. So that we could definitely incorporate into sight reading, and we should the more and more advanced we get. Going back to memorization, Sinden, one of the things I love to do if I'm working on memorizing a piece or if I have a performance coming up is I play using visualization only with no score in front of me. I close my eyes and I play through in my mind an entire piece of music that I need to perform. That takes a long time to develop that skill. But we start somewhere, and it starts by doing this kind of stuff. A lot of that is understanding where we are in space in front of the keyboard and how we move to play things. And when you've practiced something, you have developed a lot of that understanding. And so we can close our eyes and we can still feel what it's like. And when we sight read, we want to use that understanding that we've built through repertoire to come back and say, oh, I know how this feels to play all these different notes that I'm going to see. Okay, I'll sight read this example for you. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing like we just did. I'm going to do it kind of in my mind as we go. The tempo is adagio, which is lovely. And let's see, if I set... that'll be my tempo. 64. It is adagio. Nice little ditty. IB, you say, do you recommend analyzing every piece or just for sight reading? You know, there is a benefit to analyzing every piece of music that you work on. Actually, I have a video coming out about that, I think in 2 weeks. I don't think it's this, maybe it is this Friday's video. But yes, there can be great things we can do analyzing every piece that we play, at least to some degree. Analyze and understand the basics of the chords. And if you want to go further and do a Roman numeral analysis, go ahead and do one to understand cadences and to understand modulations and where things like that are happening. If you don't have time for that, I would say if there are places, especially if you're memorizing and there are places that are causing trouble where the memory isn't locking in, then analysis of just those particular spots can be really helpful. Just so we have a deeper understanding that we're building another pillar of the 4 pillars of memorization. We're building another one that we can fall back on. If muscle memory fails and visual memory fails and auditory memory fails, or we don't have enough of an ability to improv our way through or hear our way to the next note if our fingers forgot, then if we have another layer, if we say, well, I'm moving from G7 to C, and you know that, well, we can take an extremely educated guess if the muscle memory leaves us about where to go next, and it can keep us from getting off track. So I would do it in those spots, but I also give you a caveat that when we're playing a piece that's technically demanding for us, whatever that is at your level, if it's technically demanding and it requires a lot of focus for you to play it and execute the notes, we cannot really be filling our brains with theory at the same time. We should be focused on relaxing, not just relaxing physically because tension and technique is bad, but relaxing our mind so that our brain can actually keep up and focus on the feeling and what we're trying to say rather than the execution. One of the worst things that we can do if we're trying to play something difficult is try to think through every note that we need to play, or even think through every chord that we need to play. It's just too much. It's too much information. We can't keep up with that. We need to simplify. And sometimes simplifying is saying, I'm going to play via muscle memory, and I supplement that when necessary. So I have lots of other places to go to if there's a problem. But I only go there if there's a problem. And the rest of the time, I'm focused on feeling and expressing. Yeah. So it's great. It's great, and it will help you sight read and learn faster if you do all that analysis. Especially if we could say I had the luxury of attending college and doing 2-degree programs, and for music, and because of that, I didn't just have my piano lessons every week, sometimes more than once a week, but I had theory every day. Every day was either written theory or ear training. And that's that daily immersion in doing things like that. That is really missing for a lot of people if you're not in the conservatory setting and you're not in that program, or if you just don't have the time. But a lot of people, because it didn't happen in the piano lesson, I think a lot of people either don't understand the connections that were made in school, if they've been there, or because it just never happens in piano lessons, regardless of the level, because there's only so much time in an hour. We have a lot to get through. That it's extremely important to understand theory and ear training. And it really changes a lot about how we approach playing in general. So if there are ways for you to stick with that, so IB, we were talking about analyzing. Yes, do that harmonic analysis because it's great practice. But then don't let that knowledge, you don't have to memorize your harmonic analysis. You only need to memorize it if you need help in those specific places. Yes, Alexis, my pleasure. Newt Boy, you say you like to do a rhythm sight read sometimes before an exercise where you just mimic playing the notes. I think that could be helpful. Yeah. In fact, I do a lot of teaching polyrhythms in that way to my private students. So rhythms that are very difficult to get the coordination down, or the coordination where we don't do it on a regular basis. It's more rare. Rhodesy, you cannot learn ear training naturally. So Rhodesy, can you sing a B diminished, fully diminished 7? Going back to the Mazurka. Can you sing a B diminished 7 without playing it on the piano first? You could give yourself your first pitch. We'll put it down here because we're guys. With that first pitch, do you know the notes of B diminished 7? Fully diminished 7. If you do it to yourself, great. But that's part of the basis of ear training is, can you hear that relative around one pitch? It is stacked minor thirds, Newt Boy. That's great. So ETS, no, ear training, some can come from playing a lot if you're really paying attention to what things sound like. But no, we have to practice it. And a lot of times it involves singing. Even for us pianists, it involves singing. Ear training class in the conservatory is half listening, half taking dictation and writing, notating what we hear in real time as it's played, and half seeing a piece of music, being given one note and singing it without any other reference. Thank you so much, Joey. I really appreciate that. So, Rhodesy. B fully diminished 7. Bum, 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 bum. Then we can test ourselves. There it is. Can you give yourself lots of different chords? Can you sing through them? Can you arpeggiate them up and arpeggiate them down? Can you sing, keep it simple, a major scale? Give yourself any starting pitch. Can you accurately sing a major scale? It doesn't really matter what the quality of the sound that we make. It's not voice lessons. But our ear needs to know what it is. And if we don't sing the right pitch, our ear needs to be able to tell us that we didn't sing the right pitch. That takes a lot of dedicated training to be able to do that. So, Rhodesy, you say it's possible to learn songs by ear. Yeah. That's more like kind of transcription. Yeah, playing by ear, especially if it's if you get a lot of repeats. Playing by ear is also made a lot simpler if your ear knows all of the constructs that are in theory. Yeah. Rhodesy, I'm sure you know a lot of them, but have you taken the time to translate them or to move them from an analytical place to a practical place? That's where the really, really big difference comes in. So I do a lot of transcription and I do a lot of arranging. And if I'm working on stuff like that, and I am listening to a piece, I am not going and listening note by note and pausing and saying that note is, and then finding it on the piano and saying, it's an A flat. Listening again, it's an A flat. No, it is an A flat. Okay. That's not my process. The process is listening to a bar and saying, what was the bar comprised of? Was it an A flat major scale? Is it an A flat arpeggiation? Is it A flat resolving into some other pitch? But I'm listening for the harmonic relationship and I'm listening for patterns. And then I can repeat those. So if I'm transcribing and I'm listening back, I listen to a recording and I'm working on writing those notes down. After, it's not a test, but I try to do it after one play because it's more efficient. I get done faster. Can I sing back the bar I just listened to? And can I repeat it to myself? Because it's going to be a lot easier to repeat it to myself than having to rewind and click play and listen to it again and rewind. So that's taking ear training much further. Yep. Alexis, you say, my opinion on the theory that hairpins in Romantic era have the dual purpose of dynamics and rubato. Oh. I don't think it's a hard and fast rule. Alexis, it sounds like you've watched maybe a couple different videos on this topic. I know Seymour Bernstein did one on tone bass a couple years ago. And he recently did another one with Ben Lottie. I haven't listened to Ben's latest video, and I've listened to maybe 2 minutes of it. I read through some of the comments during those 2 minutes, and man, some people thought it was very cool, and other people were up in arms. I don't think that hairpins always correlate to changes in rubato. I don't think they always give us that. I think we need to be really particular about the context that something's written in. On a piece-by-piece basis, and I would lean more into, if I have a very good edition of Chopin in particular, I would lean more into looking at hairpins as signs of rubato, possible suggestions of rubato. Because let's remember, Chopin always played his own music differently. What is written down on the page for us is one possible interpretation that he liked. It's not the only interpretation. That is a controversial thing that I just said. But I truly believe that it is not the only way to interpret Chopin is following exactly the markings. He didn't interpret his own works that way. So I have a video on the channel where my teacher talks about that. You can go and watch that. It's part of the reason I have such strong feelings about it. It has a lot to do with how I was taught and how because Chopin was the composer, yes, he has license to change his work. But he is also, by publicly performing his own work in lots of different ways and by giving his own students lots of different ways to perform things, he is giving us license to interpret his music. There is a point that crosses the line. Yeah. But that line isn't even approached by most pianists today. Everybody plays it so safe and so according to the score. And yeah, there is a lot that we could look at. So that's a little bit off topic, but oh, thanks, Lori. So going back to that question, do hairpins have that dual purpose? Maybe sometimes. Maybe sometimes they don't. Maybe sometimes, and again, it's context dependent. If you see a dynamic change written in text and a hairpin next to it, well, those are definitely saying two different things. They're not contradicting each other. They mean to manipulate the music in two different ways. If the music purely has hairpins only and no other markings, does that mean we don't change dynamic? No. But if you see a hairpin and it's closing, does that always mean get softer? No. It depends. It depends on all of the other notes that the composer wrote, the notes themselves. It depends on the motif. It depends on your own interpretation of what came before that motif. There's a lot. So, in summary on that topic, I think it's important to know that sometimes hairpins can have a dual meaning. And then we need to look deeper, and we should always be asking what that is. And if a closing hairpin, is the composer intending this to get slower? Why are they intending it to get slower? What is it that they're trying to say through that marking? The marking itself isn't the music. It's what's underneath that. So if you have a forte passage and a closing hairpin, and then in the next bar or maybe a closing hairpin with a crescendo written above it. So we definitely know there's two different intentions in this measure. Great. Then what exactly is that? What exactly is the closing hairpin telling you? Is it a broadening? Is it a ritardando? Is it just a little bit of time? Is it a gesture? Is it an ending? There are a lot of different ways we could answer that question. So, that's my encouragement to all of you is when you see a hairpin in Chopin, don't just get softer and slower. Yeah. But dig deeper and try to find out why is the marking there in the first place. Yeah, cool question, Alexis. Let's see. Modern Admiral. Chopin, Opus 48, number 2. Let's take a look at that. I have left OCD's question from a long time ago. We need to hop back there as well about another nocturne. So maybe these will be good to pair together. And Joey will come back to your question in a second. .48, number 2. Okay. So, let's see. You say you're able to play hands separately, but you're struggling to get hands together. Almost polyrhythmic, but not really. Okay, so you've been doing slow practice and hands separately. Okay, let's relate this to what something that we just talked about. If you've done a lot of hand separate practice, do you really know well the melody very well? Can you sing the melody to yourself? Could you sing it out loud? Could you hum it? Can you visualize it? Can you audiate it? In this case, I would say continue to play the melody first by itself. Or continue to play the melody until that is memorized and it's really ingrained for you. And you can physically sing it. I really encourage that. While you play the left hand then, so take some time and, make sure you know the left hand on this day or whatever day you're working on it. Can you now sing the right hand while you play the left hand? Hey, Nico. Yes. So you say left hand, yeah, is weaker. Yes. So we want to focus the physical execution of left hand, but while our ear is still engaged with what the right hand is doing, even though the right hand isn't active at all. So with more practice, that melody would be more in my head. But I'm singing it while the left hand is playing the correct notes and the correct rhythms. Does that make sense? That gets our ear involved in the process, and it gets our brain is still paying attention to what both voices are doing, accompaniment and melody. Yeah? But we only have to worry about executing one of them with the hand. That's going to take a little bit of extra coordination if you haven't done that before. But the goal is that singing the one hand is easier than it is to play and coordinate both hands together. So singing one while you play the other should be easier. It might not be at the beginning because you haven't done it before. But once we have this skill, it will be easier every time you try and apply it in the future. You could reverse that and say, it's always harder to sing an accompanimental pattern, but maybe you could mark the rhythm and say, bum, 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 ba, bum, 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 ba, da, 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 da. So marking the triplet plus quarter note, just with a syllable. Doing the same thing then, right? We're still using the mind to hear and be reflective of the other voice, one other than the one we're physically working. One other thing, Modern Admiral, is it is, yeah, you said almost polyrhythmic. Well, it is, because throughout you do have 2 against 3 to play. So we do have 3 against 2 all the time, or 2 against 3. How is your ability to play and hear 3 against 2? Is that easy for you? Is it easy for you in other pieces that you've experienced it? Yeah, I'll wait for that answer first. After we finish this, I'm going to quickly answer Joey's question, and then OCD, are you still here? We will go back and grab some of the other nocturne and talk about that for a bit. Let's see. You say you haven't done 3 against 2 before. Okay. Okay. Let's perfect our 3 against 2 a little bit. This is a great piece to work on it, but we're confronted with measure after measure after measure of 3 against 2. Modern Admiral, have you looked at other resources about playing 3 against 2? I can go through many things. You know what? You know what I'm going to do, Modern Admiral? Because I have a condensed video that's going to explain it much better than I can. I'll end up taking 30 minutes to talk through what I present in like 10 and another video here on the channel. I did a guide. I called it, the video is called Ultimate Guide to 3 against 2, and I did it fairly recently, maybe just about a month ago. You should go check that video out because I go through 5 methods to play to better understand 3 against 2. And a couple of them work for all polyrhythms that you'll encounter. So I really suggest taking a look at that video, because we want to perfect 3 against 2 and be able to do it all the time. Again, start with, and this goes back to something that Newt Boy said earlier, start in the lap playing a rhythmic exercise. Here we have 3 in the left, 2 in the right. Can you do that in the lap? And repeat it. And do you know it's almost like a mnemonic device that goes with that. Nice cup of tea for every 3 against 2. Nice cup of tea. Or together, left, right, left in this case, because the left hand has 3. Together, left, right, left. Together, left, right, left. Do you understand this compound rhythm? That is the compound rhythm. Compound means when you combine the rhythm of both, and we look at it and hear it as one rhythm instead of 2 separate ones. Okay, I've gone through a bunch of things that I present in the other video, but I go deeper. So still go check that video out, and then you can practice along with some of these things. We want to be able to get that. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, Modern Admiral. Yeah. In fact, we talked about one earlier today. This piece, I love introducing 3 against 2 for my students with this piece. This was the Nocturne from the 22 Nocturnes for Chopin. This book came out a year or 2 ago. And the 3 against 2 pattern is the 3 is in the right hand instead of the left, but we still get to practice the polyrhythm. And it's not every bar. We have 1 there. We have 1 where the theme repeats. And then we have a measure of it. And a measure of it. But it's not bar after bar after bar after bar. SP, I'm trying to hear Carol of the Bells. I suppose there could be an arrangement that has 3 against 2. But let's see. It's usually in 3. But all of those are 3 against 1 in the left. So you'd have to play. So you'd have to have an arrangement that works for that. Thanks for being here, Antonio. So yeah, Modern Admiral, this piece, the Nocturne by Agnieszka Lasko. Great piece. Yeah, and I've loved having students learn 3 against 2 with it. And it still puts you in the right kind of place to work on Chopin Nocturnes after. But maybe you don't have to go there. If you've been working on Opus 48 number 2 for a while, and you've learned quite a few of the notes, maybe you don't want to start a whole new piece. So yeah, definitely go check out the other video and use those tips to get us thinking in that 3 against 2 way, and sing it too. That one I don't mention in that video. Yes, Snoot Boy, I did do a video on that. I did a review of the entire book. Yeah. Ruth, you say the melody of Carol of the Bells is 3 against 2 put together as one thing. I guess I'm just not hearing that, because I hear Carol of the Bells in 3, and then it's 1, 2, 3, which is eighth. It's a quarter, eighth, eighth, quarter, quarter, eighth, eighth, quarter. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So maybe I'm missing something in there, but that's not the way I think about Carol of the Bells. Unless it was written. It does. Oh, there you go. Thanks for pointing that out. Ruth, you say it sounds just like nice cup of tea. It does give you the compound rhythm. It's not written on the page like 3 against 2. But it is nice cup of tea, nice cup of tea. Very interesting. Thanks for clarifying that. Oh, that's interesting. I'll have to see how I can incorporate that into how I teach the polyrhythm. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that, Ruth. SP. Okay. Yeah, well, now I get it. Okay, I need to go back to, let's see, OCD King's question. If I didn't hear from them, though. Way back at the beginning, if I can find it. Yes, Chopin, Opus 15, number 3. I'll give them a second, a couple seconds. OCD King, if you're here, chime in, because we can talk a little bit about that nocturne. Where are they? Here we go. Oh, if they're not here, we can move on to another question. It's crickets. Well, why don't we, have I missed any other questions? Yeah, is there anything that anybody's chimed in with that I haven't answered? Or, if I've gotten through everything, what else can we talk about? Oh, Joey's question. Thanks, Nude Boy. Let's jump there. We'll give, if OCD King is still here and they just can't respond, then I'll give them another minute. Joey's question, how and when does one decide a piece is beyond one's ability and should put the music away and find something else to work on? Is it for someone else to say or one's self to say? Okay. So first and foremost, I guess we'll start by saying, if you have a teacher, Joey, I know you do have one. If you have a teacher, they can tell you if something's too hard. They can usually tell you that before you start working on something. Or they'll at least tell you if something's going to be a big challenge. Now, if something is a challenge, it doesn't mean it's too hard for us to work on. So we can still learn things from that kind of piece. And yeah, we might not be able to get it up to a challenge piece or a stretch piece. We might not be able to get up to a great tempo if it's very technical. It might be a struggle to get it there. And that doesn't have to be the purpose. It could be just how much can we learn from doing this, and can we get it to a moderate pace? Moderate compared to maybe the final performance tempo. That could still be great. I don't think that a final tempo or a professional tempo being out of reach for someone means that the piece is too hard. It depends on what your goals are. So yeah, if you were preparing it for an audition or a competition, yeah, then no. That's a different case. No, we should have something that we can present in the best possible way. But if the point is to learn it and enjoy the process of learning and getting something out of it, then no, it's a very different approach. Okay, so on a deeper level than that, if you're having trouble, let's say learning 24 bars. I know what level you are, Joey, and I know what piece you're playing. Pieces. If you have trouble getting a page of music, or let's say 16 to 24 bars, in your fingers after 2 weeks, it's too hard. Oh yeah, Joey. For you, I would give you 2 weeks. I think I'm just going to say it to everybody. Joey is working on Beethoven's Pathetique Sonata. And I have a feeling that's the piece that you're asking about. So, when the Allegro begins, no, it's not the piece you're asking about. Tell me what piece you're asking about. And Carle, why the wow? What? You were thinking of the Prokofiev Third Concerto? Joey, don't work on that piece. So, like I said, the first place you should go is ask your teacher. You have so much on your plate already that's extraordinarily difficult. So I'm telling Joey no because I'm his teacher. You have like 10 other pieces, and they're not easy. Stick with those. Kale, you say you're working on the second movement of Mozart's 545. Okay. The last 2 pages you say are challenging of the second movement. Kale, it depends on, a page. I know Joey's level, and I know what all of the stuff he's working on. And we work together for quite a bit. So, in general, so Joey, the problem with the general question is that it's really different for everybody. And so it's really helpful if you do have a teacher. So that's the first thing I'll say is if you do have a teacher, ask them because they are going to know the challenges that you don't know exist in the piece of music. And they're going to have an idea of probably how long it's going to take you, what aspects are going to be the most challenging, and how long those difficulties should take to accomplish. And if you don't have a teacher to ask, well, you can always come here to a stream and ask about it. And I can try to help, but I need context. So I need to know what it is that you've already played. And that's why, going back to the last question about Opus 48, number 2, how I answer that question is a bit dependent on, and part of what we talked about was 3 against 2. If you've played a lot of 3 against 2, I would have never recommended playing that other piece of music. That absolutely wouldn't be necessary. But if we've never experienced or only very little experienced that polyrhythm, that totally changes the direction that we go. And so there isn't a real clear answer. That's the summary of it. And if you can't get to someone that you can ask that question to, use a leveling system. For most people, that's going to work. So use the RCM or ABRSM leveling system. There are going to be things in there at each level that some of you will excel at more than others, and where you are is different from person to person. For example, I know people that struggle to play level 2 stuff that's requires a lot of finger dexterity. They struggle to play that up to a moderate tempo, but they can play level 6 and level 7 stuff that's lyrical and can play it well. Honestly, that's usually where the disparity happens, especially with my adult students, is that the lyrical stuff that's more slow moving, there's a lot more experience with that, and the technique is there to do things, and the understanding is there to do things at a much higher level. But all of the things that require a lot of dexterity, our level might drop considerably. So, I don't know if they're here today, but I had a student. They usually say hi if they're here. I had a student that was playing a very simple Clementi, right? But also playing a Scriabin prelude at the same time. And guess what? They played the Scriabin far better than they played the Clementi. And we'd normally think of the Scriabin as extremely advanced, even if it's a short prelude. They're extremely advanced. They have much bigger spans. The depth of the writing is much greater. But it's the technical dexterity. The Clementi was a big struggle. The Scriabin was not. SP. Sorry to make you feel that way, SP. That's good, Kale. You say you're getting there with the second movement, and your teacher told you to start looking at the third. That's great. That's good. Yes, try. You can go and try and look at the leveling systems to get an approximation of where you should be. So if you know you're playing level 6 stuff, that will also tell you where the holes are in your development, or where the things that just haven't been developed as much. So, you could use that as a guide. And then you'll also know, if you download those syllabi, you can also look and see what the technical needs are for each of those levels. And to be totally honest, I've said this on the channel before, but the technique requirements for each level of those exam boards is way easier than what you actually have to present the repertoire. So really have those technical requirements met. If you're working on level 6 RCM repertoire, the level 6 technique should be easy. If it's not easy, focus on that. Focus on getting your scales up to tempo and your arpeggios up to tempo. Because truly, what I have my students do is, if you're working on level 6 RCM, you should be playing the technique for level 8, a couple levels up. And if we're working on level 8, you should be playing the technique for level 10. And if you're working on level 10, where the technique requirements cap out, well, I set the requirements above that. Yes, Newt boy. Yes. Let's see, IB, you asked, do you have any books that you recommend for learning theory from the Romantic era? You know what I do? Instead of using a book, I don't have a good recommendation. I know some theory textbooks, but I don't have a recommendation for like a standalone resource. But what I would do is look up analyses of repertoire online, and I'm sure you could find a ton of stuff on YouTube that goes into pretty great depth. A friend of this channel is Friedrich. His channel, he doesn't have a ton of repertoire, that he's done an analysis for, but he has a lot, and he does great videos. And I think it's presented in a really cool and practical way for us. So there's theory incorporated, but also with how things sound and how it makes us feel. And so if you don't know about his channel, IB, Friedrich Viner, check him out. Last name is Viner. Good friend of this channel. We've done some collaborations together, and we might have some more. Alexis, you say small question in learning Opus 10 number 1. Let's tackle that bar 11 and then OCD King. Are you having OCD King? Let me give you a second to respond to this now that you're back. Are there particular things that you're struggling with in Opus 15 number 3? So drop those if you have some. And I'll pop back there in a second. And then that'll probably be the last thing we talk about today. But looking over at the Opus 10 number 1 etude measure, 11, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Yeah, Alexis, I have a tip for you. Okay. So we're looking at that measure at the end of the page. So this is, after in measure 9, we've come back to, and now it's F major, but the right hand is all open. And the span between 4 and 5 is a fourth. Then we change direction. So, on the way up, the biggest thing, you can't see it from overhead, but don't stretch to 4, from 4 to 5. Because in stretching from 4 to 5, almost everybody, if you stretch like that between these two fingers, is going to place the rest of the hand under tremendous tension. 4 and 5, yeah, sure, we want to be able to kind of... Can you play that fourth first? Can you stretch that? Do we have a further stretch? We want to have some dexterity there and some mobility. First of all, if you don't have that big of a stretch between the fingers, you can work to improve that by walking the 5th finger away from the 4th finger until it's a stretch and walking back down. This is a kind of a riff on something that Cortot taught. Okay? So that can help develop over days and weeks. You can slowly get a little bit more expansion between those two fingers. But truly playing the etude well is not about stretching like that. It's about moving the hand and then moving the hand again. There's rotation and another component. You can see the rotation from above. The other component is a little lift of the wrist. EP, I'd love to have a Mason Hamlin at home. I don't have one yet. It's a Kawai with it's a Kawai with Renner Steinway hammers and with a Mason Hamlin action, the WNG carbon fiber action. So it's a mutt. It's customized. So, Alexis, you seeing this lift in the wrist between 4, 5. And then we can drop 4, 5. So it's a combination of that lift of the wrist for this bar plus a little bit of rotation toward 5, which then leads us to rotate back toward thumb to start the movement over again. I'll show you from the side. So you see all that wrist movement? And, truly look for places like this that you can incorporate similar things throughout the etude, because sometimes, even the very first bar, I like it especially on the way up. You can see that there's a little movement of the wrist. And then, where there isn't movement from 4 to 5, but from 3 to 5, I do less. Yeah. Yes, Newt Boy, you say it's a little swoop. It's kind of like a swoop. Yeah, it is kind of like a swoop. But we're going further than what's talked about in that book. Yeah. Thanks, EP. So Alexis, let's go back. I may have covered this, but I just saw your comment. You say you can stretch it if you raise your wrist. We still don't want to practice stretching from 4 to 5 while we play the etude. We want to move. So we stretch to a note, relax, relax, oops, relax, relax. So these movements are never done with the hand spread. So what I'm really trying to do, as I'd work on that, is not start from C to F with the finger already there. If I'm practicing this well, I'm going to go from C, and in one movement, it's going to be kind of a stretch, but also a travel to F, keeping the hand as relaxed as possible. And if we're doing that, we're truly going to be able to speed this up in the future. And as we speed it up, there might be a little bit of stretch that gets incorporated, but we're going to have a baseline of relaxation of the whole hand between every single pitch. And that's what we need to be able to play pages and pages of this etude at a fast tempo. Okay, cool. OCD King, Alexis, I hope that helps. Yeah. Check back in, if you've got more questions about it as you continue to work. Yeah. Yeah, so you see you stretching a bit from 4 to 5, but also the bars that are easy, like bar 1, we don't want to stretch in bar 1 either. Going all the way back to something we talked about way earlier in the stream, the reason, 6-year-old prodigies can play this etude isn't because they have hands anywhere near big enough to make the stretch across they definitely can't do the 10th. And many of them probably can't even make the stretch between 2 notes. And they learn how to use movement of the whole arm to get us from note to note to note to note to note. And that's what we want to do too. Even if we have a bigger stretch and we can grasp more pitches, the etude's going to fall apart if we play it like this. It's going to be impossibly hard because it's all about this that has little bursts of and then relax and relax. That's what the etude is really teaching. OCD King, I don't have any specific tips about that nocturne, but um, 31. Almost there. Here we are. Hey, is it Jun or Yun Yun? I can. I'll do that quickly after I just talk about this piece. Thanks for being here. I appreciate your comment that we were chatting about yesterday, I think. My biggest tip, OCD King, just off the bat, is the leaps in the left hand. Again, recently did a video about this. You've probably seen it. Get very comfortable, not just comfortable with the leap, but comfortable making them one movement so that everything stays fluid and we're not we don't want to be searching so much. So as much as you can, don't practice and then, but know the one measure that you need and go straight between the two. Then the next measure, that's what I'd focus on. Playing the melody will present its own challenge in being musical with it. But technically, that's much easier to deal with. So, last question of the day. How can you show how to play 3 fast notes with the 4th note being connected, like a triplet with the next note immediately? Yeah, let's do it with a scale. And let's do it with B major. So let's set a tempo. We'll choose a quarter note tempo. And this is a good one, the one I already had set up. So first, can we hear da 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 dum? That's our rhythm. 1 triplet quarter da 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 dum. So we can tap that first. Now let's play it using a scale. And it's I didn't expect that to be that song, but let's use the second half of the scale. There's the second half of B. So we could also do this with an arpeggio. How about, and you could do a thumb tuck or, and repeat. Triplet quarter, triplet quarter. Hey Miguel, we're just about to wrap up, Miguel. And yes, Adam's family. Okay, so Yun, that is triplet with a quarter note connected. You could practice that as an arpeggio in a scale, or there is a piece of music that I know you're referencing that has this rhythm in it. In fact, because I can get there very quickly, if we go back to this nocturne that we've talked about now 3 times on the stream today, let's use, this is a slightly different rhythm, but it's a triplet. Anytime now. There we go. Okay. So we have a triplet and then a long note. And what I think we talked about, Yun, was always go from the triplet into into the next beat, so that we're not feeling with a pause, but hearing da 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 dum. In this case, all we're doing is we've changed our pulse to be the 8th note. Da 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 dum, triplet 1, 2, 3, triplet 1. Okay? I hope that helps out. Okay, everybody. It's time to wrap up. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Joey, for the snap. I appreciate that. Oh, perfect. Well, thanks, everybody, for being here today. This was a fun stream. Lots and lots of great questions. Yes, Nancy says hit the thumbs up button, please, if you could. If you haven't done that, hit it. I'd appreciate that. Our next stream is in 2 weeks. So we'll do another one of these 2 weeks from today, Wednesday the 27th. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I have a lot more people tuned in now. So just to mention something I talked about right at the beginning, for a short time, I'm going to be doing live practicing sessions on YouTube that are to show how I go into practicing a piece of music, and I narrate the whole process out loud. If there are pieces that you'd like to see practiced and you'd like to know my process, leave. I didn't see anything left in the chat. So leave a comment down in the description of this video. You can send me an email. And if I don't hear from anybody, I'll just choose music that I want to work on. But if I do hear from you, I will pick some pieces that some of you are working on. I'd be happy to look at them and talk through my process. So I don't know when the first one of those is going to be, but it's going to be in probably the next week. So stay tuned. Okay. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. Practice smartly and hardly. I'm always trying to come up with a new way to say that. Yeah, thanks for being here. I will see you hopefully in the next video or in the next stream. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.